Hello again, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of Discovery Road on the Mormon Trail. In this episode, the compelling story of Black pioneers, their footsteps, their journey, their place on the trail. Then we continue on down the road, finding enough discovery to fill up an Airstream trailer. So we better get started. We begin our journey where the Mormons ended theirs. This is the Place Monument in Salt Lake City, the place where I met young Marcus Ewell, fresh off a Mormon mission to Madagascar.
I said, "You speak my language."
Matetika ny olona mihinana vary. Isanandro zany mihinana vary. Maraina, atoandro, ary hariva mihinana vary foana ny olona.
Marcus gives us a quick language sampler, one of the many lifetime keepsakes he now has. 2 years on this island country off the southeastern coast of Africa. 65 baptisms, lots of unique experiences, and now a chance to find out a bit more about himself, his family, their contribution and sacrifice out on the trail, and an unexpected discovery about race, faith, and loyalty.
Well, right now, to be honest, it's amazing. I've come back from Madagascar, and being back in America is just completely different. Because life in Madagascar is completely different than the life out here. When I flew in, everything around me was just amazing. And I was so happy to be back. And at one point, I almost cried. Just feeling to be an American, it's just, it's a blessing, it's a blessing. And many people back at Madagascar struggle to get to America. Everywhere around the world, people want to come here. And they have a heritage, and they have people in the past, be able to be a part of that. It's a blessing.
In one sense, everything about the Mormon Pioneer National Heritage Area got its start out here on the historic Mormon Trail. Our stop at Fort Bridger, Wyoming is served like a sprawling tablecloth of history. Visitors roll in past a Mountain Man Jim Bridger statue and a colorful flag, and then by the structures that begin to whisper the narrative. It was a fur trading post, a Pony Express station, a military outpost, an important supply stop for wagon trains on the Oregon, California, and Mormon trails. And for a time, the Mormons ran this place after they bought it for $8,000 in gold coins.
The Mormons occupied Fort Bridger from 1853 to 1857. And when they were first at Fort Bridger, they began building a cobblestone structure that encircled the log buildings that Bridger had here. So they spent quite a bit of energy building a cobble rock wall that was 15 feet tall and 5 feet thick at the base.
Taking a few photos at Fort Bridger seems fitting for most visitors, and it was for us. We also discovered it's nothing new. Photographers have been stopping here to take pictures from the very beginning. And behind this old photograph, another discovery, the story of James Beckworth, an African-American born into slavery, a mountain man who also helped settle the American West. And he was one of Jim Bridger's pals. Fort Bridger, the old fortress, and its rugged and intriguing story sit like a roadside painting on a canvas of trees, water, and blue sky.
Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my...
For Marcus, the journey is a search for his roots. He is a fourth great-grandson of Mary Lee Bland Ewell. She is a descendant of a signer of the Declaration of Independence and said to be a second cousin to General Robert E. Lee. She ventured from the east to Utah on the Mormon Trail. And Marcus is also looking for her first husband, William Fletcher Ewell, who served in the Mormon Battalion. Their story is out here on the trail.
I'm actually excited about it too, to get a little bit of my mom's side of the family and hear about what happened with that, and it's an amazing thing. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Oh, there it is. Look at that. Blue Sky, Wyoming, and a penitentiary. Butch Cassidy did some time here for stealing horses. Once he got out, it was back to Utah to start that gang of bank robbers called the Wild Bunch. Long after the Mormon Trail and before this fast Interstate Highway 80, there was the Lincoln Highway. It was built to honor President Abraham Lincoln. At a rest stop, we found a little monument to one of the men who made it happen, Henry B. Joy. A fenced-in obelisk tells us he worked for the Packard Motor Car Company and was the first president of the Lincoln Highway Association. The Lincoln Highway, built in 1913, the first road across America. And just a Lincoln penny toss away, this imposing monument to the 16th president. Tourists love this roadside history.
He was a president of the United States, a great man. Que mais? I don't find the words in English to explain to you, but I think Lincoln was a great man.
Your group, tell me a little about your group. You're on motorcycles from Brazil?
We are motorcycles from Brazil.
Discovering America.
Yes, we are going to travel Lincoln Highway, San Francisco to New York.
Amazing. Are you enjoying it?
I'm loving.
What do you enjoy about the history of America? What are the things that sort of come to the surface and they're striking to you or leave an impression?
The way that you built a great nation. This is the most striking for us. The way you love your country and make it bigger and bigger.
It is kind of cool. We need the Canesville Tabernacle, please.
Give me a second. Using phones is not easy, right?
We'll get there somehow.
Canesville Tabernacle.
Canesville, Iowa.
Can you spell it for me?
Kanesville.
K-A-N-E-S. Okay, I see it.
Okay, good. I believe we take this next exit. It's Council Bluffs. That's where it's at.
All right. We are going to do, in half a mile, you want to get on the 3A 29 South.
Okay.
To Council Bluffs. Got it? Okay.
On the trail of William Fletcher Ewell, Marcus hopes to find something.
So this is from a Google site.
The closest they came.
I think he got it from one of the church websites or something.
What was the name of that? Oh, let me look there. Oh, that's your new family search.
There was another
New search. So William Ewell, let me just look in the file here.
William Fletcher Ewell.
That's your deal.
10,000
So,
left this area.
in So it's either E or A.
Yeah,
Yeah. This shows him listed in Company A on the plaque.
Confirmation is made. William Fletcher Ewell served in the Mormon Battalion. But finding his gravesite, that will be another challenge.
Okay, this is what it looks like. That's earlylds.com. We're going to look at Mormon Pioneer cemeteries. I don't know. I searched for some of mine and I can't. There's so many possibilities.
Let's hope mine pops up.
We'll see if yours does. A lot of the graves that are around here are not even identified.
Yeah, they're not marked.
And there's another cemetery at Winter Quarters, but it's up the hill a ways. They're not necessarily identified.
Well, it could be buried over here in Fairview. But we really don't have any names for Fairview.
Yeah, we don't have, all the names in Fairview were destroyed.
Somebody
Yes,
came
and that's
in.
the closest one to here, isn't it?
Yeah, for Council Bluff.
No grave marker was found. The Mormon Battalion trek was hard on William Fletcher Ewell. He died shortly after coming home, leaving a pregnant Mary Lee Bland with 2 sons, a daughter, and exhorting her to go with the saints. And that's where this story becomes a mystery.
We have several accounts of Mary Lee's association with Mammy Clow that's filtered down through the family. This one particular is in a dialogue where they're having a conversation with each other. And at one point I found it very interesting. They lost a horse. A horse died, and they had to replace that team with their milk cow. And their son, he's so ill with a desert fever that they thought that they would lose him several times. So we get bits and pieces everywhere.
Mary Lee and Mammy Clow? Who is Mammy Clow? The answer comes from journals, diaries, and personal accounts of the Ewell family exodus.
Mammy Clow came into Mary Lee's life. She was there as a slave from the Lee plantation. And she apparently was the same age as Mammy Clow's son, Sammy. So Mammy raised her and Sammy together as her own. Mammy Clow was Mary Lee's nanny, her friend, her confidant. She did everything for her, and she helped her, ended up helping her her whole life, not just as a child.
Hearing all of that, the family search now widens for Marcus. He stops at the University of Wyoming for perspective and to learn about another Black Mormon pioneer, Jane James.
I got interested in African Americans and Native Americans who were converts to Mormonism pretty early on, and how their religious experiences might have differed from those of white Mormons. So that's what I'm looking at is sort of religious experience that isn't white in 19th century Mormonism. One woman whose biography I'm writing, Jane James, wanted to go to the temple. She wanted to receive her endowments and be sealed, but she wasn't allowed to. So she constructed a religious identity that was centered on charismatic experiences that happened outside the temple. She spoke in tongues, she had trances, visions, dreams, she healed herself, she healed other people, and those became the kind of stuff of her faith in ways that I think she would have liked temple experience to be, but that wasn't available to her.
It wasn't available to Mammy Clow either. So the family story intensifies for Marcus. Mary Lee Bland headed for Zion, children in tow, buoyed by her faithful Mammy Chloe, but still facing all the hardships on the trail.
Not a thing they could do. They couldn't bury him because the ground was frozen. They stacked rocks on him, but the wolves could dig through the rocks and get the bodies and eat them. It was just a horrible time for them to leave their families along the trail. Little babies, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, they all died. There was no exemptions. People got sick and died.
As we speed down the highway in a modern vehicle, it all seems to be sinking in for young Marcus about the pioneers. 1,300 miles on foot or in handcarts or wagons, the pioneer trek was rugged and sometimes unforgiving. No wonder families would be forever connected to this road.
To read about her is to love her. And it was obvious that Mary Lee loved Mammy Chloe. And it was obvious that Mammy Chloe felt about her the same, like her own. When you read these accounts, it is obvious that Mary Lee could have never made it here without her help, without her tutor. She did not have any skills. Back home, everything was done for her.
Returning to Utah, Marcus was anxious to find the gravesite of Mary Lee Bland so he could honor her sacrifice, and perhaps find a gravesite for Mammy Chloe.
Well, we'll see. Oh, freak. Is it right here? Oh, wow. That's it. Wow. That's it. I got a call. Found it, dude. Oh, freak. Hey, we found it. Yeah, we found it. Yeah, I'm honest. I'm looking at it right now. We found it. Mary Ewell Jones. All right, we'll see you in a minute. Yeah, we found it. I'm looking at it right now. Pretty cool, huh? We're walking in the cemetery everywhere. There's thousands of you know, the stuff, the stones everywhere. It's super hard to find. And we come in and we walked right into it. Mary Ewell Jones, born November 1st, 1817. May 24th, 1898, when she died. So we're looking at it right now. Yeah, I'm gonna take a picture.
Just weeks after Marcus's discovery, other Ewell family members find their way to the cemetery to learn about themselves.
And where it says Wells and Men, so she's probably right in there.
The family visits Mary Lee's grave, finds markers for many of her children, and just across the street they learn the pioneer home where Mary Lee once lived is still there. But like Marcus, no sign of Mammy Chloe.
Mammy Chloe, have you ever heard of her? Mammy Chloe came here and settled in Santa Quinn with a cousin. His mother was a second cousin of Bob Lee, who joined the church. Her husband was buried at the winter quarters.
These anonymous men and women of African descent who journeyed to Utah in the pioneer era are part of the pioneer heritage. We know a little bit about them, but the overall diversity of their experiences remain unknown.
The The search for information about Mammy Clow in public libraries, historical records, and other places has turned up nothing. No written record anywhere of Mammy Clow.
In this A section, we have a lot of older graves. And basically the only way you can spot a grave in here, they were all buried with wood boxes back then. So the wood boxes deteriorate over time, so you'll get a little sink in the grass. And that's about the only way you can detect where a grave actually is. A lot of the families back then, they buried their family members, didn't have the funds or whatever to buy a headstone. It might be 10 years down the road. They'd come and replace the head, put a headstone in, and it might be 5-6 feet off the grave. So there's really no actual way of knowing right where the bodies are until you dig. So.
You've seen a little bit of where Mary Ewell's marker is. What do you see around that? Is there any evidence at all?
Well, what we're showing right here, there's a big dip area, and just looking at it, I would guesstimate 4 to 5 graves in this area, and we're only showing 4 on stones. So there very well could be an extra body right here in this area.
The individuals probably lived isolated from family, friends of their own particular racial population, and who in some instances not only lived but died in those communities where their remains are hopefully interred properly. But we have very little or scant information as to who they were or their whereabouts.
In the Cottonwood Heights area of the Salt Lake Valley, the Union Pioneers Cemetery. Here, important names like Greenflake and other black pioneers are etched on the cemetery monument. The Ewell family lived in this area in the 1800s, but here too, no mention of Mammy Clow, only a mention that many of the graveyard records have been lost.
And I think that is sadly part of a larger problem in looking at the experiences of African Americans as they made the journeys across the Western trails. We simply do not have an accurate knowledge of who they were or where they are today. They're part of that larger expansion west in which we have big blanks on our historical record.
A little bit before, I didn't really care too much about it, about the history, the pioneers and all that. It wasn't something I was interested in, but doing this trip, it actually got me pretty interested in. William Fletcher Ewell was actually part of the Mormon Battalion, so he went through some stuff as well. And his wife, Mary Lee Bland Ewell, was with a black slave at the time, and they went from winter quarters all the way down to Salt Lake City. And Mammy Clow was the name of the black slave that was with her. Said that she would be willing to be skinned alive to make it into the temple. You know, so they experienced a lot on their journey, you know, to the west. And so something that touched my heart, and I'm pretty excited about it, to be a part of it.
As far as Mammy Clow is concerned, she's like a legend. And we can't forget that she really was a person, and that maybe helping her receive the blessings of the temple pays her back somehow of what she did for us.
Well, look behind us. Look how beautiful it is. You know, this is what they came to, and look what it is now. You know, it's a beautiful piece of land, and you know that the saints turned it into. And looking forward into the future, I have a bright future ahead of me. And you know, looking back at my ancestry and seeing all that, what they did for us to be able to be a part of this is unbelievable. And so I want to be able to do that for my future generation as well.
But the future of Mammy Clow's story remains uncertain. We know she outlasted slavery, embraced the Ewell family like her own, and prayed mightily about her faith. And we know Ewell family descendants did temple work for Mammy Chloe more than a century later. But how did she die? How old was she? And where is she buried? All mysteries, no written record to show she ever existed. Thanks again for joining us for this special program along the historic Mormon Trail. I'm James Nelson, and we'll see you next time out here on Discovery Road.
What if one can't favor after you? What if one can't favor after you? Lord, if one can't favor after you. See that my friend is carefree. Have you ever heard a church bell song? Have you ever heard a church bell song? Have you ever heard a church bell song? Then you know that the poor boy didn't go.